red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
I'm a human being, god damn it! My life has value!
It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Hi, welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm April Bush.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
Please check out our website at truthertalk.com. See our Conspiracy Realist t-shirt, our book, Official Stories, our friend Liam's book that we have available on our site, and also read our essays if you'd like. We'd like to check out our archive shows, whatever you want to do there, and support the Dorch family. We have a campaign to support our friend Kim and her family who is being victimized by the police state. It's pretty gnarly. So go on there and you can listen to the Gnostic Media podcast or 2 interviews and hear the family talk about what's going on. And then if you have a heart, please give them well wishes and support. And if you have any extra money, donate to their legal fund.
Well, if you know a media outlet, if you have access to a media outlet, well, they will be able to broadcast and get what's happening to a greater audience. A bigger audience. Right. That would be really, really helpful because, what people need to realize is it's just them today, but, eventually it's going to come back to us too.
Exactly.
So, it's something that's affecting all of us, anyway.
Yeah. It's true. I know. It's because, if you listen to their story, you'll see this was just a very middle-class, suburban family. You would have never thought that something like this would have happened to them. We have talked about this before, that there's racial discrimination and socioeconomic discrimination in the police state. So a lot of the stuff that's going on to them has been going on for years in South Central LA.
I wasn't surprised, but I still don't think it's right, because I've experienced it in my family. So
yeah.
But see, it's like now when it's getting to the middle class white people, then it's, it's.
Well, you just are starting to see it like a disease,
Yeah, but it's gonna get to the point where it's like V for Vendetta, or but people don't realize it starts little.
Exactly.
It starts small. It starts growing out, and then it becomes more acceptable, and then the next generation, are gonna accept it even if people don't start speaking out or aware what's of stuff like this going on. So
right, and it's grueling, and they're still going through it. So if anybody can help them at all, like she's saying, legal help or media outlets or financial help or even just support, then we'd really appreciate it. So today's show, we're going to be bringing back our friend Leslie Carol Botha. She is an awesome lady. We've had her on a couple times before. She's a really good interview. She's a pro. She's been doing it for a long time, and we always enjoy her insights. And I think her area of emphasis has always been on women's health. We started talking to her because she's one of the predominant experts on the effects of the Gardasil vaccine, which is near and dear to our hearts. And that issue is really important to us because it's our friend Sarah who got damaged, and so we obviously, the vaccine issue in general is important to us, but then we take that one really, really personal because it affected our friend Sarah. But we were talking about that's one way that women are kind of disempowering themselves, and it is through the medical industrial complex. They're being taught and indoctrinated and propagandized to believe that they don't have control over their bodies. And, and when I say that, I don't just mean, you have control over to take your drugs, like in the government sense of the word, but I mean it in like, that you can actually empower yourself to have your own babies, to like you don't necessarily need to see a doctor for that, because women have been doing it for a really long time without doctors, and a lot of times doctors, their interventions are make the situation worse and stuff. So we were just talking about how some of the ways that women have disempowered themselves and have been disempowered, propagandized, and all of that. And we came across this article, or I did, and then I sent it to you, with this lady who was trying to sell herself as it was almost like prostitution in a way, because she was saying, I'm a really pretty girl, and I want to marry a rich guy who makes $500,000 or more a year.
Yeah.
So how do I do this? And she kind of had her list of, criteria, things that she's looking for, and basically, like, I'm really honest, and I want to have a rich guy, but what I have to offer him is my beauty. And so what did you think about that article?
It was wonderful, only because of his reply.
Right.
When he said that basically she'd be a bad business investment because her beauty would depreciate over time, and but while his money would still be around, so he didn't see anything that he would be getting out of just marrying somebody because of their looks. I thought it was a brilliant reply. I loved it because, I'm not surprised, because I actually had a girlfriend like that, and we're not friends anymore, but she was really nice to me, but she never, like, when she would, I really didn't approve of the way she treated men, and I've had actually quite a few girlfriends like that, and I don't really have female friends like that anymore. But, I think a lot of the women have been trained to have this, I don't know, they're trained in a way that, they have this idea that men are they're heathens, and they need to be trained, and that they're, or they, they want to be in a relationship, but they don't want to give anything. They just want to take. They don't really have anything to give. They don't see the relationship as a partnership.
Right, yeah, and it was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It was one, go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to tag on to what you were saying. It was funny because he used it in a way that, so what this article was a woman who's saying, she was posting, I guess, in like a social media network.
A dating forum saying, yeah.
A dating forum saying that, that they had that she wanted to find a rich husband, and that these were the things that she had to offer. And it was basically that she's pretty. And, I'm pretty, and I can be pretty for you, and that's it. And so this guy was a banker, and he said, I make that more than what you're asking. I think that I fit your criteria. But, he used it as basically a business investment. And that's what I thought was so beautiful about it, was because he's like, from the perspective of a businessman, we wouldn't, none of us would choose you as a wife. We might date you, but we wouldn't actually invest in you long term, because you're not a good investment. Your value will depreciate, whereas I might make more money over time, but you don't, So, so that was really interesting. But what were you saying about it?
I know. I was trying to get to this thing. I think that women have been trained to think that they're empowered, but they're really disempowered. I think that she thinks it's a powerful thing, and it is. I'm not saying that looks aren't powerful. It really is. It is a superpower, I would say. But it fades over time. Right. And if you don't have any other superpower, you're screwed, basically. Yeah. So, and that's why you see a lot of women, especially, we're in California, Los Angeles, you see a lot of women who were probably once pretty, but maybe they've destroyed themselves with plastic surgery because they've had so many surgeries, because they're trying to chase their beauty, and that's the only thing that, they invested in. They didn't invest in their intelligence or being a good person, or constantly challenging themselves, or growing in any other way, so that they are interesting people, that they just relied on their looks. And it's really sad. So it was wonderful, but it also made me the article was wonderful, but it also made me a little sad, because I know that if that's her state of mind, then, it's not...
She's disempowering herself.
Yeah, exactly.
It's sad.
She's disempowering herself,
Yeah, because she's just valuing herself by appearance.
Yes.
And and I think it ties in a little bit to the dumbing down of society,
Yeah.
because I think that what we've seen in
the dumbing down and also the divide and conquer of society.
Yeah.
Because it's this whole way of thinking is like new way of thinking is making it harder for people to form relationships with each other.
Yeah,
and long lasting. And not saying that everybody needs to be together forever. I mean, that's another show. But I think that like the relationship between men and women have been shattered, because of this mentality. And I think, and I'm just speaking from a woman's perspective, being a woman and listening to other women talk who may not necessarily think the way that I do, but just listening in. But, they read these books like The Rules and those other, I mean, I always name The Rules because that's, I guess, a really popular one, but I know there are other books that are written that's basically, manipulating women into marrying men, because, they feel they need to get married by a certain age, or they need to have this by a certain age, or the kids by a certain, whatever. So they're being manipulated into, these books teach you how to manipulate men, and then, it maybe works for a while, but when you manipulate anything, any situation you have to manipulate, you have to keep up the manipulation to keep whatever you have. So it's impossible to, it never works, basically. Even the woman that wrote the book, The Rules herself, has been divorced, is divorced. So, I mean, it's not, I don't know. And I think that some of these books too, so I like, women on the idea that men need to change men. Yeah. That they, so they have this idea thinking that I feel like men are like these dogs. And I don't believe this, but I'm just saying, these dogs that need to be trained. And because, it's really bizarre, and not all women think that way, but there are some women that do. And I don't know, she just kind of strikes me as one of these women, and it's, I don't know, it's very disheartening, it's very infuriating.
And it's sort of putting women down. Women don't realize that they're actually putting themselves down.
Yeah.
And that's and they're not, because they're doing the opposite of empowering themselves. It's like, and I think, we've talked about we wanting to do a show on the feminist myth, because there was a lot, there's a lot of evidence to show that was actually not necessarily the first feminist movement in the the late 1800s, but the one in the 1970s was infiltrated or designed to basically manipulate women into thinking that they were empowering themselves, when really they were just sending them off to work and and making them taxed and
making them more slaves.
And more a slave. And I think that what we're seeing in the dumbing down of society is like the idea of femininity, or these women who parade themselves on TV and their bodies are out for everybody to see, and they somehow have been indoctrinated to think that it's empowering to like show your cooch as you're walking out of the limo. I think, remember when that was like a big thing? There was like Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan and all these women were like just spreading their legs as they were walking out, and paparazzi. Oh yeah, everybody's thing. Vajayjay was like on public display, and so somewhere in there they got
I'm so sad I missed that
one. Somewhere in there they got that this was a empowering thing. I think somewhere women started to think that owning their sexuality and being able to have multiple partners and things like that was empowering. And I'm not saying that it's you need to limit yourself in that way, or that women need to be prudes and go back to the 1950s and like wait till marriage and all of that. But I'm just saying that they're valuing themselves too much on that. They're valuing their sexuality above everything else, and they're not learning, and they're not researching, and they're not reading, and they're not becoming interesting people.
Yeah.
Just, because this woman, obviously, if she just is sitting there and saying, I value myself on my appearance, then how interesting are you?
Yeah.
Do you like things?
God forbid
Do you have...
to a car accident and gets her face messed up, you know?
Right, or she gets into a fire and things like that. I mean, that's really tragic. If you actually sit there and say, well, you know, I'm really pretty and you know, and that's what I have to offer, but...
And also pretty by whose standards, because some people might not think she's pretty, you know?
Right, exactly. And so maybe by most typical or mainstream standards, people would find her pretty, but not, you know, but it's sort of a subjective thing. People have different interests, and, you know, some people, she's a brunette, maybe, you know, not everybody likes a brunette. Some guys like blondes, some guys like redheads, whatever. Yeah. It's, you know, I mean, some guys like black girls, you know, some guys like Latinas. It's subjective. You have your own, you know, perception of whatever you think is beautiful. So you're right. So who's to say that she's even a pretty girl, you know? But probably by most standards, she was considered to be a pretty girl, at most like mainstream standards. But it's sad because I feel like, unfortunate for that girl that she doesn't know, you know, she's not smart, she's not a good person, she can't cook, she can't do, like, what, you have nothing, that's it? You know? I would like her to say, well, you know, I'm pretty, but I also have these other qualities too.
Yeah. That's all, you know, she said.
Yeah, so I think it's very disempowering to women, and as you're saying, like, women who regard men as beneath them. I think that was also sort of this feminist propaganda that came out in the 1970s that pushed this idea that, you know, men are bad, women are victims, and women have all been victimized. And there's some truth to that. There are some truth that, you know, women have had, that there's some abuse, but men get abused too. Yeah. And so it's just not as much talked about because men are more, they have been indoctrinated to kind of keep it in and not express the fact that they've been molested or abused or raped or, you know, things like that.
Or even abused by their partners emotionally, maybe, not physically, but, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or physically, but then, you know, it doesn't necessarily hurt them because a woman isn't physically capable, but emotionally that may scar them a bit to have a woman who attacks them or, you know, who gets crazy on them. And so what we're seeing a lot is this trend, and you see these TV shows about these housewives and stuff like that, and these women don't cook. They get boob jobs and plastic surgery. That's what they do. So a lot of people think that. They think that you can land, and I guess the proof is that fact that there are some dumb guys that will actually do it. And they actually will go with these women just based on their looks. And then these women, they fight with each other. Have you ever seen any of these shows?
No, thank God. Tell me, though. Tell me. It seems interesting.
Oh, my God. I've seen a couple. I can't, but I've seen more like the commercials. I can't say I've watched like the whole show. But it's always these women like pushing over tables, and they're getting all mad at each other, and they're like waving their fingers in front of each other's face because they have jealousy issues amongst each other. So the women, it's these rich women, and they became rich because they married rich men. And most of them are attractive physically, but then once they've had their kids and then they've, you know, aged, then they start to do the surgeries and things to keep up, and then they need more money, and they need more clothes, and they need more hair extensions and so on and so forth to maintain it. I kid you not. Like, these
I believe you, but the way you put it, it's so honest, but it's so funny when you you're like, more hair extensions, but it's true because those things are expensive.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, from head to toe, they look false. They look fake. You know, you can tell everything is, you know, either it's a wig or then it's a ton of makeup, and then they've had Botox and they've had all the other things done, and none of them have real boobs, and you know, and then they fight with each other, and then they pride themselves on being like divas. You know, they love that word, that they're the diva, or even a bitch. Like, oh, I have, you know, I'm the head bitch in town. What? You just called yourself a bitch. Like, it's just so bizarre. It's like they pride themselves on in not being nice to their man, and like, I keep him in line.
I know, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I've listened to women like talk about men like that. There was like, yeah, you need to train him. I've heard them use the word train them, and I've had a couple guy friends that were in relationships like that. Hopefully they've learned and they won't do that again. Because I think there's some men that just need to go through that. They need to get that out of their system, you know. And then if you keep doing it, then you have a problem. If you do it once, okay. But anyway, like, I would tell them about, you know, like the type of girls that they were with, and they were, you know, they would tell me that she would do certain things. And I was like, that's because she thinks this. She thinks that you need to be trained. Like,
Right.
and they wouldn't believe me. And I don't know if they thought, I mean, I don't know what they thought, but I was just like, there are women that talk like that think that, I wish there were more men that would see through this, because the more men that would kind of get this faster, the less they get their heart broken, or the easier it would be to walk away when they can, you know.
Yeah, I don't know.
understand that.
I don't know, because I mean, some of these guys deserve it, because in the sense that they should be able to kind of recognize that that's it. I mean, they should recognize when a woman isn't nice to them.
Yeah.
But I think what happens a lot of times is that they too are kind of confused. They think that when a woman is mean to them, because men like a challenge, they love to chase you down. So as soon as a woman is mean to them, then it's almost like a challenge to try and get her, and trying to turn her around and make her. It's like he lacks his own self-worth, that he wants to be. He wants this woman to like him, even though she doesn't really care. You know, this reminds me of that movie. You told me about it, and then I saw it. It's, I think, about a year or so old now. The one with Scarlett Johansson, and then your guy.
Oh, man, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Oh, yes.
Yeah. That movie. What's that called again?
Don John.
Yes. That's a perfect example of what we're talking about here.
That was a brilliant movie.
Mm-hmm.
I love that movie.
Yeah, so Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays a guy who is Don John, because that's his name, but he's a Don Juan. He's very, like, he's a Jersey guy, so he's got that whole, like, Jersey Shore look going, and he goes to the clubs, and he always scores, like, almost every single night. He like, gets waylaid throughout the entire movie. But he actually prefers to have sex with himself. He prefers masturbation when watching internet porn. And so we're like, you know, so you're watching that and you're going, but this guy's like, he gets to have real women, and yet he prefers that, because it's so shallow. He's so disconnected with who and he doesn't care who these women are. It's so about just the way that they look, and vice versa, you know. And then he falls for this girl. He starts to get lonely, and then he falls for this woman who's played by Scarlett Johansson, but she is just as shallow as he is, and if not more so.
She's a princess. She's one of those princesses.
She's a total princess. She's been spoiled. She's never had to, you know. I mean, what was the scene where they're in the store, and he's trying to buy a Swiffer because he cleans his own apartment?
Got mad because she cleans his own apartment. She was like, "Have somebody do that for you." And he said that, you know, he was gonna teach her how to do it, and she didn't want it because she thought it was repulsive that he actually cleaned up after himself and took pride in it.
She was offended. She was like, "Don't buy that." She was like embarrassed. Buy that. Put that back. Don't even touch that. You know. And so here's this guy that's like gonna clean his house. His own. He's like into cleaning. He's very meticulous, and he likes to clean up his place. And she's all like discouraging him. I'm like, hell no, honey.
Oh, but
don't be telling guys to do that.
Yeah, but you know what's funny too? There was a short little scene where that, you know, she's with her girlfriends, and they were talking about, you know, they were already become an item, but they still hadn't slept together yet. And then they're like, "Oh, does he go to the gym?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Yeah." And her friends are like, "Oh, do you go with him?" And then the next scene, she's like at him with him at the gym, you know, to the point where she's just kind of taking over his life and gets controlling about it. And it doesn't. And a lot of women are like that. Like, I know women that have, you know, they will go through their dude's stuff. Like, because they don't, I mean, and not without any reason, you know?
Right.
Just always having to check his phone and check his computer and stuff. And it's just, you know, that takes a lot of energy, too.
It does.
To do that, to control that controlling of somebody. So think, what could you be doing with that energy? Besides doing that, because I've learned if a guy's going to cheat on you, he's going to cheat on you. You can't stop him. You really can't. And the more controlling you are, the more he's going to want to cheat on you.
Right, because then he feels trapped, and so you're trapping him into this thing. But he wasn't actually cheating on her. physically. He was addicted to porn. And she catches him because he didn't know how to erase his browser history. And so she looks on his computer and finds his browser history, and she finds that he's basically like looking at like 10, 15 porn sites. Like, he's really addicted.
Yeah.
And he's looking at all these porn sites every single day. And she just is like, that's disgusting, and you're crazy. So she ends up breaking up with him over it. And, but it's just, what was interesting was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I know, I want to say one of the most brilliant points in the movie, I thought, was the fact that he talks about all the romantic movies that she watches that are just as bad as porn. And you know what? I thought about it, I'm like, he's right. On an emotional level, I thought so. You know, there are women that they watch. First, it starts with like the Disney princess shit,
right?
Right, with the Prince Charming and all that stuff. And as they grow up, they have these little teeny bopper movies that they watch, and then Twilight, whatever, any love story. And I'm not saying love stories are bad. I love love stories, but it's just anyway. And then when you're adult, they have the adult romantic comedy or the romance or the love stories, and a lot of women watch that stuff like porn. I think, it's emotional porn. I thought that was... I think
you're right. Yeah, that's a good comparison to that. I hadn't picked up on that about the film before, but it's true, because it's like, yeah, absolutely.
They should just go... I'm sorry, go ahead. I just feel bad we're talking about the movie. They should go watch it.
Well, it gives a full sense of, I think, what love and romance is on both sides of it.
Yes.
Because men tend to think that, he had his expectation of what sex should be like with a woman, so much to the point that he didn't even enjoy when he was actually having sex with women, because he had this idea that it should be like what he saw in the porn. And, and I think it makes men feel insecure too, because then they think that they should perform like the men in the pornography. So then they, it's just, I think, very destructive.
Yeah.
And then you have, like you're saying, you think that men should treat you, they should come up on a white horse and be all romantic and sweep you away and make all your problems go away, when that's not really fair to ask of men to do it. And when they don't do it, you're such a princess, you're such a little diva, that you don't,
you chastise them for it, yeah.
Yeah, you think that they're not worthy, but when they're really just trying, they're trying to be a partner, or they're trying to develop a partnership, and that's what relationships should be.
Yeah.
And so this woman in this article, when we thought, it's not, it's a little off topic from what we're talking about today, because we're looking at it more from a medical perspective, but it's with Leslie, because that's her area of expertise, but we're thinking, it kind of does fit, because it's all about how women disenfranchise themselves and how they disempower themselves, whether it be because they let doctors take over their medical practice, and they don't listen to their intuition and to their bodies. Mothers don't listen to their own intuition and allow their children to get hurt and vaccine damaged, because they've been so propagandized to believe in this establishment, and then we disenfranchise ourselves by valuing our beauty above everything else, and our physical beauty, so our underdeveloped areas of spiritual enlightenment or intelligence or intellect or just
everything,
personality, sense of humor. Gosh, any of these things are going to last beyond your ability to just be pretty. And so that it's sad in that way that she just sort of and we went off on this tangent on this film, but I recommend everybody watch it. Last I looked, it was on Netflix. It's called Don John, because it's exactly what we're talking about today.
And we're not getting paid. We just really like the movie.
No,
I thought somebody wanted to give us the money, because I thought we did a pretty thorough.
Yeah, we're never going to say no to that.
Yeah.
Just throw some money at us. We'll be happy with that. But I think we're going to head out and take a short break, because we're eager to bring Leslie on the show. Leslie, you can holyhormones.com, and Leslie Carol Botha will be right with us after the break. So please stay tuned.
Everything I'm looking at seems crazy. The newspaper, the television, nothing's right. Nothing's telling me what's true. It's like I fell into a bucket of cream and kicked my legs until I became a mouse. What's that about? I'm a conspiracy realist, not a conspiracy theorist. I want a t-shirt that represents me. What? There's one that's available? Go to shop.truthertease.com, says the voice in my head. Shop.truthertease.com. It's not crazy. I'm not afraid to go on the internet and go to shop.truthertease.com. I'm not scared. I've taken out bowling balls that look like you. That's what I said. Straighten out. Get your conspiracy realist t-shirt. Don't make me come over there. You look good. You look good.
Hi, welcome back to Truth or Talk. On today's show, we're bringing back one of our favorite guests. We've had her on, I think this is our third time, Leslie Carol Botha. Leslie's widely acclaimed radio show, Holy Hormones Honey, is now on the Voice America Health and Wellness channel, airing Thursdays at noon Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and 9 a.m. Pacific Time. The show focuses on women's hormone health, mood disorder, and nutrient therapy. Leslie is an author, publisher, broadcast journalist, and an internationally recognized expert on women's hormone health. Her work emphasizes the significance of the hormone cycle and its profound relationship to the woman's psyche. Both this 35 years of research demonstrates how hormone changes, fluctuation in the menstrual cycle affect women's physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Her posts, her research, and articles on women's hormonal health are on her blog, Holy Hormones Journal. Her latest book, Understanding Your Mind, Mood, and Hormone Cycle, is available at Amazon.com. You can find all of her work and her writings and her radio show and all that good stuff at holyhormones.com. So please welcome to the show Leslie Carol Botha. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, well, holy hormones, honey lady.
Hey, Leslie, how are you?
I'm good, and thank you for inviting me to come back and join you. I'm glad
Always
to be
a pleasure.
here. Yeah, this is such an important topic for women to understand, and I'll let you take the lead here in just a moment, but it's been a topic that is near and dear to my heart for over 40 years, and we have been taught so much about reproductive health, which really focuses on our reproductive organs and sex, which is why it's always politicized, especially during election years, why everyone thinks they can have control over their bodies and saying, yeah, you can have birth control. No, you can't have birth control. And we have to get beyond that because that's a discussion that's not going to go away in that arena, and our bodies are not to be controlled by anyone but ourselves, and in order to do that, we have to know and understand our mind, mood, and hormone cycles in addition to our reproductive health.
Yeah, it's true. And, you know, I'm just curious. I want to backtrack a little bit. How did you become aware of the hormone mind-body connection? Were you educated about this in school, or did you educate yourself due to personal circumstances? What was your journey?
Oh, Virstyne, I love that question, and thank you so much for asking. My journey just started innocently many years ago, many moons ago, let's put it that way. Actually, in either the late 70s or early 80s, when I walked into a family planning clinic and learned so much about my body that I had not learned or even heard of in school, either high school or college, and I was totally fascinated. So I started volunteering. At the same time, the director of the clinic took me into her office and showed me a wall of books, her personal library, that just shifted my world. These were books about women, written by women, about women, on issues such as health, nutrition, religion, mythology, astrology, astronomy, the history of women, all these things that we're missing in our mainstream educational process, which kind of wonders, because no wonder women always feel left out. We have no sense of our history, or no sense of our accomplishments, no sense of our failures, no sense of a hard fight that feminists or early feminist foremothers, including Elizabeth Stanton and Susan B. Anthony and so many others, that fought for every human right there is. And so reading this library of books, I was, you know, my world was complete. This was the missing piece for me. The other most important thing, and of course I was learning all about gynecology and reproductive health, And I started reading a traditional gynecological textbook because I was training to be a medical trainee or something like that. And I remember reading that book going, this is nothing but the manipulation and intervention of a natural cycle. But the real kicker for me was being able to be at the front desk of this clinic and to hold women's charts in their hands. And because family planning clinics track menstrual cycles, you always ask what was the first day of your last menstrual cycle, I was able to note that women were coming into the clinic on the same day of the month for many times the same problem or similar problems. That day ranged between, say, like day 23 and day 25, 28, 31, 32, but it was there and it was repetitive and it was predictable, and I thought, well, if it's predictable and repetitive, then, you know, we should be able to manage this and understand those changes going on. Of course, those symptoms included everything from just general not feeling well, to migraine headaches, to vaginal infections, herpes infections, bladder infections, and you name it. And I say to these women, do you know you were in here last month on day 28 of your cycle? And they go, no, because we don't understand the significance of the menstrual cycle and how the changes that go on in our brain based on different hormone levels that are being emitted throughout the cycle really affects not only our health, but are also our mental, emotional health.
Yeah.
Have I explained that for you? Well,
yeah.
I could go on from there, but I want you all to interject.
I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, well, you seem so fascinated and informed on the human body and its inner workings and the hormone cycle. And did you ever contemplate becoming a doctor?
No, actually. I always found the media to be a much more powerful source. In fact, I was doing a lot of one-on-one counseling, and when I realized how many women needed to have the information that I was able to glean from various sources and books, research documents, it was like, I need to be on the radio. I need to be in the media. I need to be reaching as many women as possible. For example, many years ago now in the early 2000s, a study came out on the timing of breast cancer surgery in premenopausal women. And the author's findings were that if a woman scheduled her breast cancer surgery during the perimenstruum, let me define that, during the premenstrual and the menstrual phase, perimenstruum, that if she scheduled that surgery during that time, her chances of side effects, infection, and death were much higher than if she scheduled that surgery on either side of ovulation. Now, to me, that should have been world headline news.
Right.
And yet, when I finally contacted the authors and tracked them down, I said, why didn't you contact the media? And they said, we did, and nobody was interested.
Wow.
Can you imagine how many women's lives could be changed if information like that got out to the mainstream? Instead, we schedule our doctor's appointments, our surgeries, our dental appointments, our vaccinations without regard to where we are in our menstrual cycle. And yet science has shown that our immunity is at its lowest. Our hormone levels are at their lowest right before menstruation. Ask any woman how she feels during that time. She'll tell you, well, I can't even say it on the radio, but she feels
like
pretty
shit.
crappy. Yeah, exactly. you go, girl. And yet, you know, we know we feel like shit, and yet we go ahead and do these things anyway.
Right.
Because it's such a testosterone-driven society. Testosterone, as we know, marches on, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, month after month. And here we are, our cycling mamas and our hormonal honeys, and we're barely holding on to a society that is built on testosterone.
Right.
Yeah. Very interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I was going to say that's it's interesting, and then it's interesting that they wouldn't want to cover that because that seems like such an important. You know, you'd want to know if a woman had a higher risk for getting a surgery.
Well, it's
kind
called
of like
menstrual management, and that's what's missing. I mean, really, do doctors want to be scheduling their surgeries around a woman's menstrual cycle or where the moon is in the sky. Instead, they'd much rather prefer that we schedule our surgeries around their goth schedule.
Absolutely.
Makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, that was with my second son, Aiden, who had regressive autism after being vaccinated. You know, we had that kind of birth experience where they kept wanting to induce labor, and he was trying to schedule an inducing labor even before I was past the due date. The doctor was, you know, it's like, because it was just his deal. It had nothing to do with, you know, the timing or how, you know, my son when he wanted to come into the world, or you know, when my body was ready. It was all about his own deal, you know, and it had nothing to do with my health or anything like that. It was just his own deal, and he was really.
Well, did he say? I mean, I'm not defending him, but I'm just curious. Did he say why he wanted to induce labor? What was the reason he gave?
Oh, the reason he gave? Well, this is what he said to me. I said, well, you know, I'm not due. I don't have high blood pressure. I don't have diabetes. I'm not at any risk, so I don't want to induce labor. And he said, well, it's really sad when a woman has a dead baby.
Oh, what an asshole.
I know.
Oh, my God, the fear.
Oh, you're right, exactly.
So what happens is that you induce labor like that, and for a pregnancy that is going along normally, all right? And you just shut down them hormones. They come to a screeching halt like, what is going on here? We're not ready for this. And now the very sad thing is, April, and I'm hoping this wasn't your experience, that right after delivery, women are being put on synthetic hormones and or Depo-Provera, which I now call the birth control vaccine, thanks to Bill and Melinda Gates. And so they're getting double slammed. Say you're a woman that did have that surgery scheduled, or a C-section, or even a natural birth scheduled before your body was ready, and then your hormones are interrupted then, and then afterwards, right afterwards, then you're put on these synthetic hormones.
Right.
What chance does a woman have? I mean, really. And then I've been hearing from more and more women who are suffering from postpartum depression, which is why I'm excited for your show next week, because this is what's happening to them, and I have to respond to them all the time. I'll let you guys lead the conversation, but I do have a lot more to say on that topic.
Well, I mean, I didn't go on any synthetic hormones after that. They had, after my first son was born, they put me on birth control, and I'm a very sensitive person, so I did it for like 3 days, and I said, I can't do this. I can feel that it's just, my body is just not responding to this at all. And so when I delivered the second, my son Aiden, I didn't go on birth control. They wanted me to, but I just blew them off and said, no, forget it. Because they try and encourage you not to get pregnant in the first year after, to allow your body to heal. But what happened in that experience, Leslie, was, so he told me, he tried to fear me into doing it, and then I said no, but of course I was emotionally wrecked, and because it scared me. And I was pregnant, so I was already emotional. And then I went home, and like a week later, they called and said, now you are past your due date by like 3 days. We want to schedule you for an induction. So the second time I agreed. So I went in, and the nurse had started put me on the IV, and they had, I mean, it was horrible. They had us wait for like an hour or so, and so the whole time I'm anxious and stressing, and so then they put me on Pitocin, and the doctor comes in after I'd been on this for like an hour or so, and I'm starting to have contractions, and he puts his hand up and he says, "Oh, the baby hasn't dropped. His head has not dropped to the cervix. We have to stop."
Oh God! Oh dear! I am so sorry for that. But let's talk about that. I mean,
yeah. And so I said, so we stopped, and I went home, and I'm having They stopped giving me the Pitocin, so eventually the contractions ended. But I'm having contractions the whole way I'm going home, and freaked out, because Aiden. I'm 5'2". He was 9 pounds 9 ounces, so he was just a big boy. So he had a hard time dropping in my cervix, but he eventually came on his own. So they wanted to induce me the following week, but then by Friday, by the end of the week, he just started coming. I just started going into labor naturally, and that's where he ended up being delivered. He was totally, and then I had a natural birth. I didn't have an epidural or anything. But what did that do to me?
Yeah, that's
physically?
a good question. Yeah.
And to him, and possibly to him as well, that they were giving us, not only emotion, I know what it did to me emotionally, but as far as what did the Pitocin do to my body?
Yeah.
And his body, and to him.
Exactly.
Do you have the answer to that? Do you know what that stuff does?
Well, anything you put into your body goes right into your baby. So, goodness knows. And how they get away with these things is, since we're all biochemically different, there could be so many different reactions, and they're different between each person. That's what we're seeing with vaccine injury. There are thousands of anti-immune reactions. There are thousands of reactions that we see along the autism spectrum disorder. Maybe not thousand, but now there's a whole ASD, autism spectrum disorder. So how we present depends on genetics and environment and nutritional health and so many other things. But no, specifically, and maybe that's something that Cheryl can address next week. But just still the experience. It takes control out of your hands, April, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then places control into the doctor's hands. And that's a very sad thing. Birth is a natural process. Menstruation is a natural process. A menopause is a natural process. Now that we're coming up with premenstrual syndrome, which I try to avoid all the time, PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which, by the way, and I say this every time I can, is now classified as a mental illness and is listed in the DSM-5 and has been for many years. Okay. And now we're looking at postpartum depression as postpartum psychosis. And I just posted an article on my blog this week about it's now being called maternal mental illness.
And this is in the DSM too, where they cross?
Not yet, but we're watching.
But you know what? We know that the DSM is full of shit because, excuse my language, basically because it's all subjective. There's no test. It's just a bunch of hot-headed, arrogant doctors who think they, who want to classify things and they vote on it.
Bible of the psychiatrists, absolutely, and they're about label diagnosis and prescription drugs. End of story.
And because of that, any given day you can go to a psychiatrist and get a different diagnosis depending on how they feel. It's not.
Or depending on where you are in your hormone cycle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you're depressed, you need to know what's going on with your body, and is this a phase? All right, is this depression lasting throughout the menstrual cycle, or is it part of your premenstrual syndrome? If it is, then we can be preventive, and there are certainly lots and lots of things that women can do these days. But the real push is to put women, postpartum women, on Prozac and Xanax. Mm-hmm. And this was on Good Morning America sometime last fall or late last summer, sometime in there, and I got up to drink my cup of coffee, reading the trailers on Good Morning America, because the rest is, garbage. And I'm looking at this, but they even did a segment on it, using Xanax to help mommies be better mommies. What they're doing is creating addicts.
Right.
Yeah. And
what about...
Go ahead, April. I bet I know where your question is going.
I was going to say the women who then just out of nowhere will drown their babies, and then they always turn out, or, they kill all their children. They just snap, and then we find out later, they were on Xanax, or they were on Adderall, or they were on something.
And they were incarcerated. Absolutely, and that's a long topic, and that's a very scary subject, unfortunately. If we don't start wising up as women and bringing women back into healthcare, bringing women's wisdom and intuition back into our minds, we're going to be seeing more and more of that. And I'll tell you why. We are now, all of us, are nutritionally depleted. I don't care if you eat organic or whatever you're eating. We are nutritionally deficient because the soils are deficient in minerals, especially. Our food sources are deficient. We've got generations of kids growing up now that don't know a rutabaga from a potato, and they don't even know what a live food or a garden is. They're eating processed foods, microwave foods, junk foods, because they're easy, convenient, and they're affordable in this day and age. And every generation therewith becomes more nutritionally deficient. It is just the name of the game, and it ain't rocket science. It's pure common sense. So now women are experiencing hormone imbalance and anxiety in their 20s and in their teens, and I hear from them all the time. And that's such an early age. You throw in drug use, prescription drugs, you throw in synthetic hormones, which also deplete nutrients. Drugs deplete nutrients. Prescription drugs change the neural pathways. Birth control pills are steroids. They suppress any synthetic hormone, suppresses ovulation as a steroid, and, you know, we bring down our athletes for being on steroids, and yet how many millions of women are on steroids and on them and unhappy on them. But that is the trend. But the nutrient deficiency and the detox that needs to take place for young women thinking about having pregnancies is crucial. I posted an article not too long ago that was talking about if a mother is hormonally imbalanced, then she passes that on to her children, her offspring. And that makes sense. I interviewed Robert Whitaker. He wrote the book Anatomy of an Epidemic, The Rise of Mental Illness in America. It's a longer title, I believe, than that, but that capsulizes it. And he made the point in his book, which just stopped me dead in my tracks, that in the 50s and the 60s, when they were first introducing psychotropics to the market, and it was probably more in the 50s, that those psychotropics forever tweaked the neural pathways, which means that each generation, and, oh, by the way, 1 in 3 Americans were on psychotropics at that point in time. I think it's 1 in 4 today, and those numbers are rising. But they forever tweak the neural pathways, which means in each ensuing generation, that neural tweaking is further distorted. So why do we have so many mood disorders, anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder? It comes from a long history of your parents' mental and emotional health. Very frightening.
Yeah, and you know, when we've had you on before, we've talked about all the toxins and some of the things that you've come across in your research, the BPA, obviously the vaccines. You know, there's so many, and the food is obviously nutritionally deficient. So, I guess you know, this would be one of the reasons, like you're saying, there's this epidemic of people with mental illness or, you know, depression and so forth. But then there's also a huge rise in women with infertility. And, I mean, at young ages, you know, women in their 20s and 30s experiencing not being able to get pregnant. And so, yeah, do you find this all... So what causes that?
Well, there are lots of things. Great question. There are lots of things. And let me do this. I don't know how many of you are following the Gardasil HPV vaccine issue, but Japan has just nixed Gardasil. It's out. All right.
Oh, really?
And they all would like, and they'd all like
wonderful.
to stand up and say, rah, 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 this is great. However, Japan is more concerned about damaging this generation's fertility, because there are a lot of menstrual issues and infertility issues with the Gardasil vaccine, and maybe we'll get into that today or not. However, Japan is having a hard time repleting its population because of the high rates of infertility in that country, i.e. introduction of synthetic hormones, i.e. introductions of BPA plastics and other estrogen mimickers in makeup and perfumes, in shampoos, in the dryer sheets you throw in your dryer, in sunscreen. I could go on, but I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but I think I caught your attention on that one. Singapore is struggling to population up, and they're afraid the population's going to die out. These are severe issues. Infertility certainly is on a rise here. On the other hand, we've got a booming IVF business, in vitro fertilization business, and they're making hundreds and thousands of millions of dollars off of women and insurance companies and women trying to get pregnant. All right. The very industry that is causing these problems in women to begin with all the chemicals and the synthetic hormones, is benefiting on the other side when we are rendered infertile. Very serious situation. Now, you have to understand fertility. Fertility is based on hormone ratios and hormone production. And it all begins in the brain, which is the largest endocrine gland in the body. And when those chemical messages are disrupted and not getting to the right cells, then we start having physical, mental, emotional problems. Now, the reproductive system is the first system in the body to shut down, which I found fascinating when I read that. Why? Well, that's to prevent us from having a baby that's unhealthy. If we're not in a good state, our babies are sure not going to have a good state, and there's another issue off of that. So you've got a reproductive system that's shutting down. You've got hormones miscommunicating. You've got synapses in the brain miscommunicating, and people wonder why they're sick. So a hormone is like this, and someone else used this on my radio show, and it's such a great analogy. So what is a hormone? A hormone is a chemical. A hormone carries chemical messages to the cells. So it'd be like, April, I called you and said, oh my God, you won $1 million in the lottery. You got to pick up that phone right now and get down there and get your ticket. And you're not home. You've got 5 minutes to pick up $1 million, and you're not answering. You're not hearing the message. Or Virstyne, it'd be like I called you, and the line was all staticky, and I say, oh my God, your mother's in trouble, you need to go over there. And you go, oh my God, okay, I'll take care of my brother right now. And you're out the door to take care of your brother.
I don't get the $5 million? I would have made that work.
You have to pick up the phone to find out, right?
Kidding,
but I mean, that's the analogy. It's a good analogy because it makes it easy for people to understand. Now, there's an NEI supersystem. It's called the neurological endocrine immune system. That is the NEI super system. It starts in the brain. And when your brain is getting the nutrients that it needs to function, then the endocrine and the immune systems fall into place. And it really is a beautiful thing. And then the healthier you get with those three systems functioning, then the other systems in the body, digestive, etc., start falling into place. It's not rocket science. It's a beautiful, easy to understand science. Neuroscience is changing everything. And by the way, and then I'll take a breather and let you girls talk, women talk, I should say. I sat in on a neuroscience webinar many years ago, and David Mark was the researcher, neuroscientist. And he ended a very complex webinar presentation on addiction in the brain, and we can see now how the brain can heal, even from meth addiction, given the right care and feeding of the brain. So he concludes his very scientific presentation with this statement. He said, if everybody's neurotransmitters, and neurotransmitters are located in the frontal lobe of the brain, and that's the brain's communication system. If everybody's neurotransmitters were balanced, we'd be a society filled with happy, healthy, loving, spiritual, compassionate people. And that statement rocked my world. And I started to understand that most people live in the hellhole of their brain. They've fallen down a rabbit hole, and they don't know how to get out. And they really don't want to be angry or depressed or have anger management issues or lash out at kids or husbands or wives. They don't want to be alcoholics. That's not a lifestyle of choice. It's just when the brain doesn't get the nutrients it needs, it becomes depressed. It becomes angry, and then we exhibit that behavior. You know, and so I tell people all the time, hey, there's nothing wrong with you, and you can get back to where you know you want to be and be that healthy, happy, loving woman that you know that you can be and want to be. We just need to do some healing work with that. Yeah. And detox and get some nutrients in your body and get your brain functioning again. And it really does seem to help a lot for a lot of people. Vitamin D3 is crucial. Oh my gosh, there are so many diseases, and including premature death, that are linked to vitamin D3 deficiency. And that is the missing hormone. That we get our D3 from the sun. None of us are out in the sun often enough or at great lengths of time. And that is like, I'm losing my analogy. But D3 from the sun, you get D3 from the sun, and then it goes through this almost like a photosynthesis process with a plant. That's what I was trying to think of. We all remember photosynthesis. Synthesis, if I can say it, right? And it has the same kind of chemical reaction in us, and it becomes a hormone. So if we don't have enough vitamin D3, and it takes a long time for D3 to build back up in the body, Sue Rex Ryan has written a book. I've interviewed her a couple times called Defend Your Life. It is an award-winning book on vitamin D3, and it's available on Amazon this summer for $5.95. And I've just ordered quite a few copies to hand out to friends. But this is a crucial vitamin/hormone, and of course if you have a missing hormone within the hormone dance going on in your body, you're not going to function right.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you say, too, like I saw an article on your website talking about fertility issues of the circadian rhythm, and well, you're talking about the lack of vitamin D3, but the lack of being out in the sun wouldn't that dysregulate our circadian rhythms? And because then we're not sleeping as well, because we're not spending the right ample amount of time in the sun and in darkness, and we're awake all hours of the night, and so on and so forth. So, can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, I love that question. And circadian rhythm is finally starting to come into mainstream science as more circadian disorders are being labeled. In fact, I was leaving Steamboat Springs, Colorado one time, and I had on their local radio station, and the advertisement came on. If you have circadian rhythm disorder, call us. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Right. Wait a minute here. But beautiful question, April. I love addressing it. It's in my book, Understanding Your Mind, Mood, and Hormone Cycle. Every cell in our body dances to the rhythm of the universe. That is the circadian rhythm. It's based on sun cycles, and it's based on moon cycles. And if we don't do that dance, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, with the cells in our body, again, the messages get skewed, and we don't know when it's day, and we don't know when it's night, and we can't sleep during the night, and then we're sleeping all day during the day because we're so groggy and worn out. That is a prime example of a disease process in the making. The endocrine system is the body's regulator of these external and internal messages. Think of how many women are suffering from hyper or hypothyroidism. There is a website called Hypothyroid Mom. She's got thousands of followers, and she has listed 300 classified diseases as being hypothyroidism. But we look at these individual diseases, come up with its own individual drug, and start treating these women when the real root cause is thyroid imbalance and hormone imbalance. But the pineal gland in the brain is where we get the external messages, and they're transmitted through our endocrine central nervous system to every cell in our body. This is crucial. This is why women were revered as goddesses many, many, many moons ago, even much longer than I've been in this discussion. But women were the first to understand the natural cycles of the universe, the importance of the lunar cycle and the importance of the sun cycle. And they were the first to understand that their menstrual cycle danced to that cycle. Now, we're going back to days where there were no lights, concrete walls, women lived outside, there were tribes, and you think about it, it's, again, common sense. When the moon is waxing and it's full in the sky, everybody's day is extended. When the moon is waning, or there isn't a moon in the sky, then everyone huddles around the fire at night trying to keep warm and sharing stories. So it made a big difference on activities going on with that tribe. Women's cycles also matched the moon cycle. The new moon lined up with the first day of women's periods. Ovulation lined up with the full moon. In fact, before we understood how sperm came into play and men came into play, it was thought that the full moon impregnated women. And God, wouldn't we like to have those days back again? Dear Goddess. Okay, never mind. I digress. However, and so because of this, women were the first mathematicians, agronomists, agriculturalists. They were the healers, and they were the midwives. And they kept their stories alive by word of mouth and sharing this information. And a lot of times that took place in a menstrual hut. Or now we have the Red Tent movement, which is alive and well, and 1,500 red tents are being held around the world where women come at the new moon and leave all their labels off as women and come and be women and talk about their stories. The joy and the pain and the tears and sharing. And it's a respectful spiritual circle. But so all these things are being shared in the menstrual hut. But then history took its course, and history, H-I-S-S-T-O-R-Y, H-I-S-T-O, his story, let's put it that way. And knowledge became written. Medical colleges came along, and midwives were burned, as well as other women healers, and anybody who believed in the natural cycles of the universe were also burned, and that was millions of people during the witch-burning days. The first witch to be burned in the United States, I think in the 1800s, was a midwife, actually. So there's a long history here that has been written about, but what that has done is that it shut women down. Because the only way we could survive was not to tell our story. And then we became isolated. We went off and married. We got out of the tribe, and then we married, and we were left home alone to raise the kids. And then our premenstrual phase came, and we were wondering, oh my God, what's wrong with me? And then the husband comes home and says, oh my God, what's wrong with you? And the kids say, oh my God, what's wrong with you? And it starts that whole negative action reaction in the brain, what's wrong with me? And I must be the only one who feels this way because there's no source of communication until the internet now, and social media and all the resources that are out there, which has changed the playing game. But still lots of women think that they're the only ones that this is happening to. And so instead of a natural cycle, we now reach the week before menstruation, and instead of that gentle downward curve, the dip in hormones, the dip in the immune cycle, a gentle fatigue, slowing down, all natural, it's not like falling off a 40-foot cliff onto jagged rocks. And it's called bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder is women are naturally bipolar. Our hormones rise and our hormones fall. It depends on how manic they are when they're rising, and then how far down they're falling into the rabbit hole on the other side, and how many women are put on all of these bipolar drugs along the way. And that's, again, where my work has helped so many women in understanding the changes that go on in their hormone cycles and how that does affect their behavior. And when women understand that they're entering the perimenstruum, because when you ask women, where are you in your menstrual cycle? Well, I don't know. But when they understand where they are in their hormone cycle, they work on prevention, as I mentioned before, and they understand it's a phase. And they take care of themselves better instead of self-destructing. For example, if you have 4 or 5 drinks, and I'm being extreme on this, 4 or 5 drinks on one side of your hormone cycle, right after menstruation when your hormones are rising, you can handle those drinks. If you have the same amount of drinks right before your period, you're flat out ass under the table. Because your hormones, your hormone levels are diminished, your immunity is diminished, you're more tired, and that alcohol or drug just hits you like a 10-ton brick. And in fact, I did it, my presentation at the Larimer County Detention Center. I had 5 women in orange, hung out in the bars downtown, blue collar. I said, alcohol here, alcohol there, and they said, well, no wonder we end up in jail every month and have our periods. They were being thrown into jail for disorderly conduct and disruptive behavior. Now, to me, that's a huge social issue. And if women had this information, how many girls could we prevent from running away at home? When either mom's premenstrual, the daughter's premenstrual, God forbid they're both premenstrual, right? How many, I've come to believe that family dysfunction is due to hormone imbalance. and a lack of awareness of what's going on with anybody. You see, we have to get away from feeling that we are it, the id, the ego. That's old science. We are biochemical. We are all about them hormones. And we've got to get away with this thing, what is wrong with me? We have to reverse the conversation to say, what nutrients might I be deficient in? And that's especially true for women post-pregnancy.
Have you come across any research on the effects of EMFs, the circadian rhythm, and or fertility?
I haven't researched that, but it would be fascinating to research. I would think that all has a lot to play into it, and here's the deal. Our environment is getting more toxic, and our immune system is getting weaker, and will continue to get weaker with each generation. How many, April, do you know, or Virstyne, it's 1 in 4 kids has chronic illness, 1 in 2 adults is suffering from chronic illness? I mean, that's huge. Yeah. I was at the Autism One conference at the end of May, and one of the work, and it was fascinating, filled with biomed research, not one pharma company there. Biomed research on nutritional supplements and all these other things that could be done, and cutting-edge science to be done to help children with autism and help them heal. One of the, and Dr. Andrew Wakefield was there, and Robert Scott Bell was there, and Dr. Mayer Eisenstein was there, and I had a chance to meet all of these people, and so many other researchers were there, Rashid Buttar. It was just fascinating, but someone along the line said that vaccine injury in children is autism. In our middle ages, it's chronic fatigue syndrome, and in our elders, it's Alzheimer's. And that really is the spectrum that we are dealing with. And things present differently depending on where you are in that spectrum. The other thing that I think it was Mayer Eisenstein, and I can't remember. So, don't hold me to that one. One of the presenters, no, I think it was Andy Wakefield, who said, whatever you inject into that fetus in utero will have a different outcome. This relates to Pitocin for you too, April. Will have a different outcome based on where you are in your pregnancy. Which I thought was very fascinating. The move now is to inject pregnant women with the flu vaccine, which that baby, that infant then is getting its shots of mercury right there in utero. And that is a very scary move when anything you inject, you take, you ingest during pregnancy is going to affect the outcome of your baby's health.
And it just makes me so angry because, they know that smoking causes effects, but yet, they're not going to realize that vaccines do all this harm.
Vaccines or medications. We're now seeing women on psychotropics during pregnancy having children with birth defects. That's new science that's starting to evolve. But no, they do no wrong, and their products have no side effects until you listen to the television commercial, right?
Yeah, I know. I know. I want to go. Did you want to say something? I don't want to cut you off. I want to.
No. Go ahead.
I want to go a little bit and change gears a little bit because I want to know about the rhythm method. Is it a myth or reality? And I also want to know about the biological clock, because you hear it all the time in movies, and even most gynecologists would say around the age of 35, women's fertility will go down, and if she does get pregnant, she's at greater risk for having complications. So is that true, or is it a myth?
It's not a myth, and it is true. And I'll tell you why it's true. Because the more nutritionally depleted a woman is, hormonally whacked out, been on years and years of birth control, the more toxins, the more vaccines, the more psychotropic drugs, the more at risk anyone is going to be for having a baby later on in life.
Okay.
All right. Sad but true. I'd like to say it's not, but this is our reality. It's really clear that you could prevent a lot of these issues and extend your fertility cycle and have a healthy baby. It all depends on how well you are taking care of yourself and your partner's health. that comes into play as well. Okay. All right? What he eats, what he drinks, what he smokes, what he takes affects the quality of his sperm. In fact, I've talked to many women who've been with guys who are, you know, the beer drinkers and the smokers and the good old football and eating the crap food, you know, during the football game, and then they can't get pregnant. They move on to a guy that takes care of himself, and bada bing, bada boom. Yeah. You know, I mean, we have to think, this is not, you know, this is common sense.
I do Bikram yoga, and I met a lady, she's probably in her 60s now, but she was telling me she first got into Bikram yoga because she was going through menopause, and it was one of the things that gave her relief. And then, well, her period had stopped, but she was still going through, like, the symptoms, the hot flashes and everything. And she said once she started doing Bikram yoga, she got her period back for a year. And I just thought that was fascinating, and I was thinking it has to do something with the circulation. And she also said that she did start eating healthier. Mm-hmm. And, and it changed, you know,
reproduction shuts down if we're not healthy enough to bring a baby into the world. And the parents that are able to get pregnant and they bring unhealthy babies into the world, woe to them. I mean, they are burdened from the get-go with a sick child, huge financial costs, and it changes their lives forever. And April, you know that, with your autistic child.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that I'm pregnant right now.
Oh, Leslie, congratulations.
I told you. And I just turned 40 last November, and it was funny because I was taking my son to an acupuncturist, and she was saying, I kind of was making a joke how, oh yeah, I'm 40 and I just got pregnant, and she said, oh well, no, because it's like your biological age isn't necessarily the same as your chronological age. So if you've been taking care of yourself these last years and so on and so forth, you know, that is going to affect your fertility and your ability to have, you know, a healthy pregnancy versus your actual age. And so I guess that's where we were kind of wondering, because she says, I mean, in her field, she does treat a lot of women for infertility that come in their 30s and such, and and they're already, I mean, usually women in their 20s aren't, even if they're trying to get pregnant, they're not really going to panic until they start getting into their 30s, and they still can't. And so then she says they're younger, but they're, you know, they're not fertile, and they're not healthy. So so that was kind of, I guess,
that's beautiful.
What
and she's right, and she is so right with that. Our chronological age is way different than our biological age, and we are aging faster biologically these days than we are aging chronologically. And thank you for bringing that up. That is such an important point. So what we all want to do are adapt lifestyles and supplements and tools and yoga and all these things out here to extend our biological age. Otherwise, we're going to be very sick adults at a very young age. Yeah. And this generation now is not supposed to outlive their parents. And that is the reality of it. So, again, you know, huge issues on the plate, but I mean, if we just bring women's intuition and healing and knowledge and wisdom back into, you know, our consciousness, we can avert a lot of these problems instead of just buying into what the doctor says about induced labors. You need to be on synthetic hormones. You need to be on mood disorder medication. You need, ka-ching, 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 right, ladies? And ignoring what we know. I see this in talking to so many mothers now with injured daughters from the Gardasil HPV vaccine. And they say, intuitively, I knew it was bad, but I went ahead because I believed my doctor. You know, they did what was right, and now they're paying the price, and now their daughters are paying the price. And again, I got into this, Gardasil. I've been in the vaccine issue for almost 40 years as well, 30 years, as long as I've been on radio. But the Gardasil issue got me going all over again because, one, we're vaccinating girls at the most fragile time of their life, which is menarche, which is the time of first menstruation. We're sending these toxins and aluminum and whatever else is in the vaccine, and there's a whole list of stuff to be concerned about in that vaccine. Alumina is a neurotoxin. It's crossing the blood-brain barrier while these girls are trying to develop their own reproductive rhythm, their own endocrine rhythm, to start menstruation, the menstrual process, so that they can have children sometime down the line. I have heard horror stories of many women who've been vaccinated with Gardasil whose ovaries have atrophied just when they're getting ready to start having children. And of course, Dr. I can't think of her name, Diedrich, posted an article in the British Medical Journal about a 16-year-old girl that she was, Deirdre Little, excuse me, that's her name, Dr. Deirdre Little, from Australia, posted an article about a 16-year-old girl who went into early menopause post-Gardasil vaccination.
Oh, my gosh.
And the other thing that brought me into the conversation, and certainly this makes sense now since we went over it at the first part of the hour, was vaccinating girls without regard to where they are in their menstrual cycle. I mean, how could anyone think that when a young girl is not feeling well, maybe exhibiting signs of a cold or a viral infection, bacterial infection, depression, during the perimenstruum, that it's okay to trot her off and get her vaccinated?
Yeah. It's true. A good example, our friend Sarah that we have on our show all the time, who's was vaccine damaged by Gardasil. She, at 13, had the Gardasil vaccine. She had started her period, and once she got the shot, she stopped having a period.
Yep.
It just completely threw her out. I mean, she's 21 now, she's still,
struggling.
She got a period back though, but she
But it took later.
But she still can't walk. That's her thing right now. Her
oh boy.
Yeah.
So there goes that neuroendocrine immune system. All right, that's what needs to be focused on and repaired. That girl has suffered brain damage.
Well, but she's very brilliant. She's very articulate and brilliant. So
well, in terms of her paralysis and her legs not working.
Got you.
But not mentally, emotionally. Yeah. The first time I was invited by a mother in my community when I was on the radio back in the 80s in Fort Collins, and she invited me to come see her vaccine-injured child, a paraplegic, and two mothers in town. They were friends and both had paraplegic daughters post-vaccination. In my first instant response in my head, my mental process said, oh my God, these girls' spirits are alive and well, and they're locked up in this body that's been destroyed. And to me, I can't think of anything more frightening for a parent. And I was able to obtain the medical records, and I still have them for one of the mothers. And of course, the infant has a vaccine injury, and then they're put on these heavy-duty medications, including morphine. What the hell are they thinking? I mean, they're further destroying that infant's neural pathways and all the systems in the body just by treating that seizure. That's epileptic medication. And whatever else that infant is experiencing. I mean, before it even has a chance at life.
Wow, yeah, that's devastating.
It is. And I'm watching the clock, but April, another really good conversation would be to have with you or someone else on the vaccine issue, or maybe you have covered this already, is what does a mother do when she bears her child and then is being forced into vaccines and pressured? That's the conversation that needs to happen. And that's the conversation that we need to make women aware of. Now, Dr. Brian Hooker, who also spoke at the Autism One conference, said, we're asking the wrong question. We don't want to ask anymore, is thimerosal and vaccines dangerous to my baby, because all the CDC studies say no. The real question is thimerosal safe for myself or for my baby? And those studies say yes, or unsafe. is thimerosal unsafe for my child or for my baby? And those are the studies that he has gotten through the Freedom of Information Act after 10 years, tens of thousands of pages of documents that he and the Geyers and other researchers are now coming through. And yes, CDC studies note that thimerosal is not safe for anyone to ingest, period.
Let alone a small baby, you know, it's sickening.
Let alone a small baby who's coming into this world struggling because he or she is nutritionally deficient because the mother didn't have the nutritional reserves available to that infant. It all goes back to the health of the mother, and that is going to result in the health of that infant, the health of the mother and father, in the health of that infant. I can't stress, because I'm sure that you have a younger audience, how important nutrition is to everyone these days, especially if you're suffering from a mood disorder or chronic fatigue syndrome or an autoimmune disorder, and how especially crucial that is for pregnant women, for the health of their baby, and to avoid postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and maternal mental illness.
Yeah. Just changing gears a little bit, only because I wanted to ask you this last time, or I think this might have happened like right after we talked to you, but I want to know what you thought about the self-mutilation of Angelina Jolie for her supposedly preventative breast cancer, only to get breast implants afterwards.
Great question. Great question. We're now seeing enough research coming out stating that mammographies are doing not only more damage than harm, but it's not catching a lot of the lumps that are causing breast cancer in women. This latest study showed that there was, I'm going to say 5%, 2 to 5% difference in breast cancer rates and survival rates of women who received mammograms their whole life and women who did breast self-exams. So there is that. But this is what I say to the question, and I love it, Virstyne. Let's think about what we're doing to women. First of all, we're putting women on steroids, i.e. synthetic hormones. That's happening at puberty, from everything from acne to a broken ankle. And that's the crazy analogy that I use, but a study shows that 63% of women on synthetic hormones are not sexually active, so that backs up the broken ankle. We're putting women on synthetic hormones. We're shutting down their whole endocrine system, which will result in thyroid issues, a host of other hormone imbalance, mood disorders, and breast cancer. Second, we move farther down the body, and then we lob off the breasts. And then we move farther down the body, and we take out the ovaries, and we take out the uterus, because by the time women get to a certain age, they're so endocrinally whacked out, their uterus is just atrophied and is not functioning, and everyone wants to take it out. So you got women on steroids, you got women with no breasts, you got women with no ovaries and no uterus, and you've got women who have all of these things going on with them. So what is left of being a woman? And that is my question back to you.
I don't know.
Exactly. So yes, I was upset with Angelina Jolie. Of course, this is a personal decision that every woman needs to make herself, but prevention is key. Vitamin D3 prevents cancer.
Well, to me, I also, what really disturbed me about it is I would read articles and I would see women on threads saying, oh, she's so brave, you know, and to me, I didn't think she was brave. I thought it was kind of idiotic, honestly. And
well, you have the most beautiful, influential woman in the world who pharma got a hold of, right? She became the most beautiful, influential woman of the world, and now a puppet of the pharmaceutical companies, and is spreading fear into women everywhere. Not to say that breast cancer isn't prevalent. It is, and we all need to be careful, but we need to be preventive. And that's a lifetime commitment.
Well, I thought it was weird, too, that she got breast implants, and that increases your risk of cancer, doesn't it? Like putting
what did I say before? We create these procedures on women due to the chemicals that the industry puts into our foods or waters or hormones and everything else, or vaccines or drugs or birth control, and then we get sick, and then they're on the other side with the cure and making money off of that.
Yeah,
it's the same thing.
Yeah, no, yeah, but I'm just saying, I guess my point is that she basically did what she did in vain, because you're gonna, I just thought it was weird, you're gonna cut off your breasts in case you might get breast cancer, but yet you're going to exchange them with fake breasts while increasing your chances of getting breast cancer.
Breast cancer.
That was just so weird to me, you know?
Well, you're right. It is weird.
You know, so I'm sorry. I just go on.
Yeah,
no, I'm glad.
It is weird. And
women have brought up such great points, and I've got another commitment that I need to get to. Is there anything else that I can share with you?
Well, please remind everybody before we let you go where your website is and your book, so that everybody who's listening can go find it
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. My blog is, as April said, and that wonderful introduction is Holy Hormones Journal. It's holyhormones.com. I post about all things hormonal. I used to share information about, menstrual cycle and hormone health and everything. And now I'm sharing all this information on the social politics of women's health, that women can help wake up and understand how they're being used and abused by the medical and pharmaceutical complex, and how all these people are making money off our ill health. So that's why that maternal mental illness article is up there, because it's a real problem. I can tie anything into hormones. My book is Understanding Your Mind, Mood, and Hormone Cycle. You can find it on my website, or you can go right to Amazon.com. It is a text workbook. We've written it, and it's well researched and documented and footnoted, and it is more geared towards helping young women in academia get the information that they need so that they can be healthy, functioning, hormonal warriors. Hormone goddesses, if you will, and understand themselves. Because when I started applying this and started learning about myself and accepting myself, I found out who I was. I started trusting myself instead of feeling like I had to control myself. And think of all the ways we control ourselves. Our image, our weight, what comes out of our mouths. We're controlled all the time, and we feel like we can't tell the truth, and we have to be controlled all the time. And then we go into hormonal rages because we know it's not right. And everyone says, what's wrong with you? And the last thing I want to say, I want to remind everybody who's listening, every woman who's listening out there, I don't care what age you are, this is not our reality. This is not women's reality. And we have to know that. This reality was built without our input, without our construct, without our anything. This is not our reality, and that's why we struggle so much. We have to get back to women who are in our circle, in our tribe, whether that's a red tent or gathering with other women friends, and start crafting our own reality again based on who we are. And that's the only way that women will become empowered and become valuable players, instead of the puppets that we are in walking and working and trying to play and love in a male reality. And those are my parting thoughts with you today.
Well, that's a great way to end. And we want to thank you, as always, Leslie. Certainly welcome back anytime. We will probably call on you again, I'm sure. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for being on the show.
And thank you so much. I love talking with both of you, and thank you for being open to the message that I have to share with all women.
Oh, thank you. So wonderful. And we'll probably have you back again, I'm sure.
Okay, lots more to talk about. Great questions on your part.
Yes.
Okay, have a great afternoon, and thank you again.
Okay.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.
Hello, thanks for having me on your radio. Even though we're not from a famous rock and roll band, if we were, even though we sound a little like we are, we definitely wear a Conspiracy Realist t-shirt, because they're gear, aren't they? Oh yeah, they're really gear. I want to write a song about them. Conspiracy Realist t-shirts at truthatease.com. I gotta think of the middle eight. Shop.truthatease.com. What does that mean? It's the internet. What's that? I don't know. It's a net. It's between things. Shop.truthatease.com. What's that? It's where you get Conspiracy Realist t-shirts. Oh, gear.
Hi, welcome back. Thanks for listening to Truth or Talk. You can check out our website at truthertalk.com. So we just interviewed our friend Leslie Carabotha of Holy Hormones Journal, Holy Hormones Honey.
Our hormone homegirl.
Our hormone homegirl.
That was kind of hard to say, right?
It was hard to say. So many H's. She's awesome. She's always good on our show. She's just one of those people that's just good radio. And so we just enjoy having her on, and she knows a lot about a lot of different things. And I think that, her mission has always just been to teach women how to heal their bodies and how to keep in control of their bodies, and in a real way, So, because I think like a lot of this, what the government does, women can control her body by having an abortion or by getting on birth control and things like that. But that's still like sending you over to the medical industrial complex and letting them figure out what's good for you. They're just saying, well, you have the right to do that. Well, or take any pill you want or any drug you want. Oh, but you want to do it naturally? No, forget it. It's like gross.
I know.
And that's the government's idea. That's their way of saying empower your body, have rights to your body. It's just by doing what we tell what our like cronies in the medical industrial complex want you to do. But then Leslie's saying, no, you don't need any of those people. You don't need to be a doctor, and you don't need them to tell you what's right for you, because you know what's right for you and you can feel it in yourself. And so just empower yourself in your body. And so it's a good message, and it's important not just for women, but I think for anybody. It's just that's her area of emphasis, and we wanted to talk about that because I'm having a baby, and also just I think anyone who's having a baby or who wants to have a baby in the future wants to know about these issues that are specific to women.
Well, still, even I think men can benefit from this, because they understand their partner, they understand the details of menstruation and or what the effects of it. They can it would make the relationship better. It would make it would be less stressful for both parties, especially if a woman knows they're like, okay, they know she knows her cycle, she knows when she's gonna have certain symptoms, and she can better not necessarily control, but just better deal with what's going on in her body, to the point where maybe she is in a lot of pain, or maybe she isn't eating, or that it would just be easier for everybody. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think what Leslie brought up a good point where she was saying like how you're having all these issues and you're feeling all out of whack, and then you get crazy, and then everybody says, well, what's wrong with you? Well, maybe it would help them kind of understand what's wrong with you versus just asking, making you feel bad about yourself because you have, a hormonal breakdown or something because you're PMSing or whatever.
Or they won't be as scared.
Yeah.
Or freaked out, And
I think, I don't know where I heard this, but I heard one time that all men used to know, this is one of those things that's another area of like, it was common knowledge and then it became forgotten knowledge, but men used to understand when a woman's ovulation was, because, it was just, they just could tell when she was ovulating. So they knew if they wanted to have a baby, like natural birth control, they could either have sex with her or not, depending on where she was in her cycle. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah. And that used to be common knowledge. Men knew it, women knew it. It wasn't anything that was like, it was just common information, just like the sky is blue.
So that this is way before condoms, say.
Oh yeah, before any of them.
Yeah, but they don't need them because they just, they do. They can have sex for fun, or they can have for pleasure, and then if they want to get pregnant, if you know that, then your partner, when and when not to have sex,
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't need a condom. It's great.
Well, people would just know. They had their, yeah, exactly. They had sex with their partner without concern of pregnancy. do they have slips and accidents? I'm sure they did. I'm sure that they're human and they messed up once in a while, or they wanted to have sex during the ovulation but didn't necessarily want to get pregnant and whatever. But the point is that it used to be something that we were all aware of, and we've just goes to show how disconnected that we are. That even women don't know when they're ovulating. Yeah. And so, but there was a time when it was actually common for even men to know when their woman was ovulating. So it's a good point to say that men can actually learn from understanding or listening to someone like Leslie talk about women's health issues, because it affects them too. And she, I think, touches on things that don't just affect women. When she's talking about levels of toxicity and these things that are going on in our society, that's prevalent whether you're male or female, and in some ways it's affecting men more so, because we've seen that in autism and ADHD, and they're more sensitive to having a vaccine reaction than the women are. So it's or females, they're not women, they're usually children, so little girls have just a better ability to detox. That doesn't mean to say that they're not then later slammed with other problems. Like we were talking about the infertility issue. I think that that's a really, really common, but that affects men too, because they want to have babies as well. And if they have a wife or girlfriend who can't get pregnant, that affects them. And then also if they're not being able to get her pregnant, then that's something they need to kind of understand. So that's something that's universal as well. It shouldn't just be a woman's issue.
Yeah, it's everybody's issue. It's our issue as a society, really.
Yeah. Yeah, the fertility thing, and she brought up the Gardasil. I mean, and that's we've known that for a long time. That Gardasil causes infertility. So, and other vaccines as well, but that one is specifically, and. It's interesting how she talks about it. You increase your risk of having a reaction when you have your menstrual cycle, and this is also true about getting a breast cancer surgery or having breast cancer treatments during your cycle versus not during your cycle. You have less chance of a reaction if it's not during your cycle. Isn't that a trip?
No.
So, yeah, I know.
It's like your force field is down, Like you have a force field, and it's like, yeah. It's up and it's weakened, so other stuff can invade it.
It's hard not to think that there's a conspiracy when she says that because Leslie's very well circulated in the media and knows a lot of people, and she's been around for a while doing this work, and then she goes out to tell everybody, and then they say, we don't want to know about it. It's like you go out.
Everybody like the mainstream media.
Yeah, she was trying to get it out into mainstream media, and no one was willing to pick it up. No one cared.
But they'll pick up Kanye's and the other girl's wedding. They'll do that.
Right, they'll do that, but they won't say. It's a simple fact like, oh, can we just reschedule your surgery not around your menstrual cycle? That's all they got to do, but they won't because it's. Doctors are lazy, and they want to just do it whenever it suits them, Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot more to it than that, but I think that has a lot to do with it. I would not underestimate the laziness and some of these, and the incompetence.
Or just the selfishness, really.
In the selfishness, because I think a lot of times it comes down to that, when you scratch the surface about how the doctors are taught, they're not taught a whole lot about nutrition. They're taught almost nothing in medical school, but there are some things that they're taught, and there's some things that are just common knowledge. And but yet they'll always go to the drug. Now, are they paid? Probably most of the time. Are they indoctrinated? Yeah, probably most of the time. But laziness, I'm sure, factors in as well, and just their own selfishness of not wanting to deal with it. Like, I don't want to look it up. I don't want to read a book. I'm just going to give you this because then I won't have to think about it. And then they think that they're better than us and that we're not smart enough to, do the work ourselves.
Yeah.
So then they don't trust us. So they're like, I don't trust you to go off and have a clean diet, so I'm just going to give you this drug.
It's true.
Right? They don't even give us a chance. They don't even think that we could possibly do it, And then if we tell them, they try and, if you say, well, what about during this diet? Oh, that's really, really hard to do.
Oh, totally. Yeah. That's how they treated me when I had my issues. I was like, what about this? And the doctor was just, it was,
Right. They just be like, oh, you don't want to do that.
Like, are you here to help me? You know,
right.
It's like, aren't you, like, what are you here for? Why did you, you know?
Right, and then if it's just a prescribe a pill, it's like, shouldn't any monkey be able to do that? I mean, you know, just read the symptoms and go, okay, then this. You know, It's like, all you got to do is be able to know how to read, and most of the time they don't even do that. So any pharmacist, anyone, I mean, so many of these people are trained enough that they can do what doctors do if that's all they're going to do. It's like, you know, they're just going to prescribe a med. So empowering yourself is so key, empowering your own health, and empowering yourself as a person, and valuing yourself as a person too. You know, so at the beginning of the show, before we had Leslie on, we were talking about just the ways that women and people in general have been just propagandized or indoctrinated to just disempower themselves and not, you know, think for themselves, not think critically, and not value their own or find their own self-worth. I see that a lot in the dumbing down of society. I think it's as a teacher, you know, you probably see it in your kids a little bit.
I do.
The way they value like things, or, you know, consumer things, or that gives them self-worth rather than things that really matter.
Oh, all the time. Or the fact that, you know, they think that if somebody always gets A's in class, they think that that person's just naturally smart. They don't believe that that person maybe tried harder, or maybe they do have a knack for something, but they believe that they can't practice and get good at that knack, you know, whatever that knack is.
Right.
Whether it's art or math or spelling or science, whatever, they're like, oh, that person is just good at math. And then I remember experiencing that myself, because for a long time, you know, I didn't like math and I pushed it off, and I was like, well, that sucks. I'm not good at math. I'll never be good at math, you know.
Right.
And then you grow up thinking that. I don't believe that anymore. I mean, I'm not really good at math now. I mean, I know basic math, but I didn't go deep into it. I know now if I choose to, I can go back and I can relearn it and I can get better at it.
Right.
But the people, when they get indoctrinated at a young age, they believe that. They pick up that belief system, and they hold that with them throughout the rest of their life. You know, so then when you come to somebody like, or you come to a situation where there's like a doctor-patient relationship, those type of people also might give in, because they're like, oh, well, I'm not smart as he is because I didn't go through 1,000 years of medical school or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's true, and I had the same experience. I was also poor at math, or thought I was really bad at math, and didn't, you know, I just believed that. And people in your life will tend to put that on you as well. You know, like even my own parents, like the teachers and everybody kind of gave me that, like, oh yeah, that's just not your strength. You're just not good at that, you know. And so I went on believing that forever, and until it wasn't until I got to college, and then I still had that belief system. I didn't think I was good at math. I didn't think I was good at math, and I'm still not great at it. But I had once I finally got past, like, I think it was one of the algebras or whatever it was I had to get past in order to just, you know, finish my prerequisite skills. I actually was like, you know what, maybe I'm not that bad. Because it was really hard, and I earned that C, I tell you what. It was really, really hard, but I got through it, and then I had to take the next course, which was not statistics, but it was something hard like that, and I aced it. I got, like, I was doing, you know, all A's and stuff like that. So it just I had to like penetrate through that belief system, and I had a tutor even, and I fired him, and because I wasn't getting anything out of it, I felt like I was still struggling.
You're like, I'm so stupid. Why are you here?
Exactly. And so once I fired him, I actually did better. It was I started doing better on my own, and that was the end of that.
You know, I think there are people that do have certain strengths and weaknesses, but I think that, you know, we're taught that if you have a weakness, then you shouldn't work on it, and it's too late for you, too bad for you.
Yeah.
You're fucked, basically. You know, there's no way around it. And that also has to do with like that we learn, we have different ways of information depending on the passions that we have or the things that hold our interest too. You know.
Right. Yeah, for real. It's true. I mean, you don't have to necessarily be good at everything, but you definitely want. I mean, but you get disenfranchised, disempowered, you know, and it's the people that tell you these things throughout your life, you know. So that girl we were talking about at the beginning of the show, the one who wanted to marry a rich man. I wonder, you know, is it harmful to you as a young girl, or if you're growing up and everybody's constantly telling you, "Oh, you're such a pretty girl, you're such a pretty girl, you're such a pretty girl."
It is, I think.
And then they, you know, and you don't. It's like, would she grow up to then be the person that did that? She would value herself as a pretty person, just like I didn't think that I was good at math, you know, and you didn't think you were good at math because we had been just told that we weren't, and then we just believed it, and then we just kind of stuck in it for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, so I don't know. I'm wondering, you know, because you hear people say that all the time, and it's like that when you compliment children, that you go straight to their physical appearance. You're so cute. You're such
yeah. And the children that don't get those compliments will stand around and notice too. Then they'll figure out who's attractive and who's considered attractive and who's not considered attractive.
Yeah.
Children are super observant. Like, I took my computer to school to show them a video, and they were already like, "Your desktop is messy. You need to," you're like, "Why do you have black tape on your camera?" I wasn't ready. I couldn't really answer that one. I mean, I did, but I don't think they understood it, you know. Yeah. You know, about the black tape. But anyway, I was just like, but they're so, you know, they're always taking in everything you're doing or you're saying or, you know. So they definitely noticed things like that. And they noticed the fact that you told them that their friend was pretty, but you didn't tell them they were pretty. You know, they'll pick that in too. Even though you didn't call them ugly, they'll take that in, what they observed about, you know. Oh, my friend always gets told that she's pretty. Oh wow, I must not be that pretty. You know. Exactly. I always get told that I'm smart, and people like it when I'm smart. So I must be smart, and it's important to be smart. And then you know, and whatever. I mean, But I think beauty is a superpower, and I think that if you are, I don't know, if you possess what it's like, what am I trying to say? If you possess the qualities that conventional society considers to be attractive, then you have a certain, I think, responsibility, or you have a certain, maybe responsibility is not the word. I mean, yeah, you do have a certain responsibility because you will be awarded certain things and given certain things because of just how you look, and that's how we are as a society. So you need to really think about how you're going to let that affect yourself and other people. But in this instance, she might even get it with the rich guy. You know, there might be some dude that's like, "Oh, she's hot. Like, I don't care." You know, she might fulfill her dream, but in the end, it's that, you know, I mean, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's yeah, and it's funny when you say that. It's like, I wonder, because I think that some of us, you know, weren't like necessarily the most beautiful kids or something like that. I wonder if that kind of helps you not go down that road and not value it. I mean, is somebody who's just a cute little kid, and then they grow up into a pretty teen and then a pretty adult. I mean, does it sort of help you to kind of have an awkward phase and not, you know, and have braces and zits and things like that to sort of kind of get you out of that spell, you know?
I think it does, because I was really, really, really awkward when I was young. But I noticed the way once I got my braces off and once I, like, comb my hair, when I start wearing skirts and stuff like that, I noticed the way that people treated me. So I feel like men and women, as I got older, I had more trouble with women because women had insecurity and jealousy issues and stuff, and they do things to sabotage you, like we were talking about earlier. If they think because they start comparing yourself to the And I was aloof, like I was a nerd. I swear, like everything in Mean Girls happened to me. Like I was in situations like that. That was the best. Have you seen Mean Girls?
Yeah.
They basically everything I was because I was so awkward and I wasn't really popular and I was kind of geeky when I was in college. It was really living with women and being with other women and stuff. It was a very interesting experience for me. I grew a lot, but I saw that nasty side of women that I didn't see before, because before I wasn't a threat to women because I was awkward and I had like a headgear and a lazy eye and I was jacked. But now I got all that fixed, and took pride in certain dressing and stuff like that, and it makes a difference. But a huge difference. Like like night and day. Like certain guys that like ignored me, literally wouldn't even like give me the time of day. Like would like rush up and talk. It was just weird.
That was my experience too, because I had I think it was probably through middle school for the most part. I was awkward, and I had a tooth that stuck out in my front teeth, and I had
Did you look like an ogre?
I didn't look like an ogre. Maybe I did. I don't think I looked like an ogre, but
a bit.
I didn't. It was just, but it was, it didn't look good. And then I went and I was chubby, and I had this tooth, and I didn't know how to dress at all. I dressed very I don't even know if I had any style whatsoever. I don't know if my clothes matched. I don't know what I was doing. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know anything. I didn't wear makeup. I didn't really know anything about anything. And when I got to high school, freshman year I was the same. And then sophomore year, I was like, I wanted to fit in more, and so I made more of an effort. I tried out for cheerleading, and I got on the squad. And then I had, and just from being on cheerleading squad, and my mom put me on a diet, and I lost some weight, and I got, and then my friend she had a really good sense of fashion. She was really into dancing, and so she taught me a few dance moves, and she taught me how to dress. Yeah, because she was like, oh my god. She was like, oh my god, no, like socks and flats? Oh, what are you doing? Because I remember I was wearing like my mom's skirt or something with like socks and flats. And she was like, ugh, like, and the socks didn't even like match your shirt. Like, you look crazy. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know. I had no idea.
Yeah, totally me too.
And then she was, and I wasn't, I wasn't really like tomboyish. I was athletic when I was in elementary school, but I wasn't ever like a tomboy or anything. I was always fairly feminine, but I just didn't know how to dress. And then, I just was awkward. And then, so that happened, and it was like overnight. As soon as I kind of got a clue, and overnight it was like, then I got a lot of male attention. But then with that, comes negative female attention, because like you're saying, then you're not a threat, so they don't care about you. You're whatever. But then
it's so nice to you too when you're like, oh,
Yeah, because they're not threatened by that at all. So they're like,
I'll be friends with you with your headgear and your lazy eye and your crooked tooth and your chubby,
Right, whatever, and it just, so that was kind of a similar experience. So I wonder if it, it takes you a while to kind of figure it out, too, doesn't it? It's like, you don't necessarily right away think, like, oh, I'm a pretty girl.
Oh, totally, because you're like, and you never think anybody likes you. Like, it took me, I'm still, like, I've gotten better as an adult with that. Like, I've been so aloof when people would, like, flirt with me or, try and come out, like, it would just go right over my head, and I have to be like, my friends are like, I think he said that because he liked you. I think he was trying to ask you out, and you just pushed them away. I was like, I did, like, so over the head. But then I also had, like, women in my life that were amazing that would see through it, and they would tell me things like, oh, they're just jealous, and I wouldn't believe them. I was like, really? No, come on, they're not, like, people are that mean to you because of that? Like, you just think it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous, but anyway.
Yeah, I know, it's true. And I've even considered this, like being in the vaccine movement, the anti-vaccine movement, the vaccine truth movement. I've seen how sometimes even other women in the movement, like, they'll get really down on Jenny McCarthy, and I swear I think sometimes it's fueled by jealousy. Because, so good chat today. We love having Leslie on the show. Please, before we wrap up or whenever, just check out Leslie's stuff. Holy Hormones Journal. Leslie, Carol, both thank you for being on the show today. And we're just about out of time, or we are out of time here, so I think we're going to wrap her up and give you guys some peace.
Love you guys.